Well, welcome back to Think About It, where you can daily, digitally come in and check in with me for thought and an update, all from a biblical worldview and all in under 3 minutes. Timer starts right now. Now, as we continue to adjust to the new normal of the COVID-19 crisis, it is interesting and important to put things in perspective from time to time. Now, today may be April 14th, but the entire world has been changed just in the last few months. Literally on the last day of 2019, on December 31st, China reported a collection of cases in pneumonia in the Wuhan province. But by January 7th, the health authorities identified that these cases were part of a novel coronavirus, and they began seeing person-to-person transmission far beyond that they would ever imagine. And before too long, by January 30th, nearly 10,000 cases had been reported in over 20 countries around the world, which also included the United States, after a 35-year-old man tested positive in Washington State back on January 19th. Now, this crisis proves that we've been underestimating the impact of person-to-person transmission for a long time. But while we seek to avoid it in terms of a virus, person-to-person transmission of the gospel has been the calling of every Christian for the last 2,000 years. And it's for that very reason that the book of Acts is one of my all-time favorite passages in books in the Bible. You see, the book of Acts is all about the beginnings of the early church and how God empowered his first disciples, the first Christians, to faithfully communicate the message of the cross and the empty tomb despite tremendous persecution. And while there are so many wonderful passages, Acts 16 is one of my favorites. It shows how the Apostle Paul was getting ready for his second missionary journey. And as he and his companions were beginning to minister throughout Asia Minor, it's interesting, the Bible says that the Spirit of Jesus was hindering them, preventing them. And so as they worked their way as far west as possible to the town of Troas, God sends Paul and the men a vision of a man in Macedonia standing and begging, saying, "Come over and come help us." And I love the next verse. It says, they prepare at once to sail over, and they put out to sea for Macedonia. Now, that may not seem very important to you at first until you realize that Paul and his companions are not just taking the gospel to a new region, but to a new continent, Europe. And as they placed their feet there on the shores for the very first time, little would they know that their faithfulness would not just impact the formation of modern history, but also the very foundation of this country that we know and love. And so what began as just a handful of faithful men, trusting God for his guidance and his boldness to share the gospel person to person, little did they know that they would shake the whole entire world, 1 billion people over. Now, you may see the impact of person-to-person transmission in the context of COVID-19, but when's the last time you wrestled with the impact of your life in sharing the gospel from person to person? It seems to me that just like Paul, this may be a new season for you to trust God with that next step in a new direction. So don't just think about it, but spend some time on this Tuesday praying about it, just like Paul did.